This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, the Game Boy Geek here. Today, we're all going to be working together. We're all on the same team. We're going to be cooperatively exploring an island together. Now we got there by helicopter, and we're there now. We're trying to find these treasures and explore the island, and some of the island's going to be sinking, and we're going to be trying to, shore up the island spots, and we're going to be trying to find these treasures and get to the helicopter and get the heck out of there before we all die. Today we're talking about an awesome family cooperative game called Forbidden Island. This is from Gamewright. It's 2 to 4 players. Takes about, I'd say, 30 minutes, 20 to 30 minutes to play. Let me show you how it's played. I'll see you on the other side. In Forbidden Island, you're going to be trying to gather 4 of these amazing artifacts and get off the island before it sinks. Now each player playing will get a random role assigned to them. There's 6 possible roles: pilot, engineer, navigator, diver, explorer, messenger, and each of these has a special ability that each of these people can use throughout the game. Here the island is set up. Now every game, the tiles will be in different spots. It will use this sort of layout, but the tiles will be randomly assigned, so every game feels quite different. At the beginning of the game, 6 of these tiles you'll notice have sort of a bluish background. That's because they've been flipped over. They have some beautiful artwork on one side, and once that piece of the island starts to sink and get water on it, it's flipped over. So those are random as well, coming from a flood deck. So this is sort of the beginning of the game, and each of our players puts a pawn on their starting tile of wherever their color is. Now, the game has one victory condition, and that is you're able to get all 4 of these treasures and get back to Fool's Landing and take the helicopter off the island. However, there are 4 ways to lose the game. Number 1, if Fool's Landing actually sinks and gets removed from the game, you lose because you can't take the helicopter off. Number 2 is if this water level ever gets up to Skull and Crossbones, you all die. Notice that you can start the game on Novice, Normal, Elite, or Legendary as well. If a tile sinks, meaning it's already flooded and it gets flooded even more and it sinks, and this player has no adjacent tile to move from, you all lose because he drowns. And the last way to lose is, you'll notice this tile both has the lion on them, and that's this treasure. This is the one of the 2 places you can get this treasure from. If both of these completely get sunk and removed from the board before you get this, you lose because you can't get that treasure. Not only does everyone start with the rolls I showed you earlier, but everyone starts with 2 treasure cards. These most likely will be treasures of one of the 4 kinds, and over the course of the game you're trying to get 4 cards of the same treasure and to be able to get it. Let me tell you how a turn works. On the back of everybody's roll card, it gives you the order of play. Each person, one at a time, is going to take 3 actions. Then they're going to draw these 2 treasure cards, and then the island is going to get flooded. And here's the different actions you can do. Number 1, again, you get 3 actions. Number 1, you could move, and this is adjacent, not diagonally. And this would be a good time to highlight the amazing artwork in this game. It really does bring you into the world, into a different world. And it really reminds me of an older computer game called Myst that I used to play as a kid. Anyway, moving. Remember, you get 3 actions, and moving is one of them. So if it was the blue player's turn, he could move. That's 1 action. He could move again, and he can move again. So maybe he did his 3 actions. That's all of them. All he did was move that turn. But essentially, you can move 1 place for an action. See, we just did move, and one of the other things you can do is shore up or basically fix a tile. When you shore up a tile, you're doing it for one of the ones that are already flooded, because if this tile were to get flooded again, it's removed from the game. In this case, since it's the helicopter, you'd lose. It's his turn. He can shore up any tile that he's on and any adjacent tile. So you could do that one and that one. That's 2 actions. He can't do this one because it's diagonal. So that would be 2 actions. Then maybe he moves somewhere else for his 3rd action. Then it would go down throughout the next step of his turn. The 3rd thing you could possibly do on your turn is give someone a treasure card. Maybe I'm with this player on the same tile, because you have to be to give a treasure card. And let's say this player really needs 1 more of these to collect his set of 4. So for an action, I can give him 1 of these cards. But you have to be careful, because when we give that player a card, he now has 4, which is what we need to do to retrieve that treasure. But he now has 6 cards, and he can only have a maximum of 5. So he would need to decide which one to discard. The last option you could possibly do on your turn is capturing a treasure. So let's say on this player's turn, after I pass him the card, he moved here. And you can go to any one of the places that has that treasure, which is the one we're capturing. He would place his 4 cards into the discard pile, and he would get to collect this treasure, and he would put it right in front of himself. So in some way, you're either moving, you're fixing or shoring up tiles, you're giving treasure cards to other people, or you're gathering the treasures. Now after you've done your actions, you'll be drawing 2 cards from the treasure deck and putting them here. Some of these have special actions, I'll go over those later. And again, making sure you don't have more than 5, otherwise they would discard. Then we would draw amount of cards from the flood deck with the level. Right now we're at a level 2, so we would draw 2 flood cards, but if you're in this area, you'd go 3, this area go 4, and so on. So we would draw these one at a time and resolve them. So in this case, it is the Temple of the Sun gets flooded. So that would be this one like this. And the second card is going to be the Dunes of Deception. And this one would get flipped as well. Now, let's just say it was later in the game, and this tile already was flipped over. If that card had come up again, it would get completely removed for the game, and it would leave a gap in the island. The island's going to start to shrink as the game goes on. Also, if these 2 players were on this tile when this was already flooded and then got flooded again like I just showed you, and this tile goes away, these 2 people can jump to any adjacent tile. So maybe this guy jumps here and this guy jumps here. They could jump together, but that's what they would do if that tile sunk. That's the end of the player's turn. It would go to the next player. Let's go over some of the special abilities and special cards. The pilot's cool. Once per turn, he can fly to any tile. So the pilot could fly maybe from here to any other tile for 1 action once per turn. That's a pretty cool ability. The diver can move through adjacent flooded tiles or missing tiles for 1 action. So this diver can move all the way through here and go right there for 1 action. So he gets stronger as the game goes on as the island becomes flooded. The explorer can move and fix or shore up tiles diagonally. So he can move diagonal like no one else. That's 1 action, and then he can shore up this tile for a 2nd action like nobody else could do. The engineer is great. He can shore up 2 tiles for 1 action. So for 1 action, he could do this one and this one. It's really cool to be the engineer if there's a lot of flooding around you. The navigator can move somebody else up to 2 adjacent tiles for an action. So maybe he wants the explorer to be here really badly. For 1 action, he can move them twice. And the messenger can give treasure cards to another player without having to be on the same tile. So the messenger's here, and let's say he really wants to get a card to help him finish his set. So for an action, he could just give him one of these treasure cards without being in the same spot. Now when drawing those treasure cards after you've done your actions, I told you most of these cards are good. For example, there's some special ones like a sandbag. This allows you to basically, at any time, not even on your turn, you can just put this card in the discard pile, and you can basically shore up a tile. It's really good if you're far away from something and you really need it done. The helicopter is another one, which basically allows you to move 1 or more pawns on the same tile to any other tile. This is also the card that makes you win, because at the end of the game, you play this when you're on that fool's landing where the helicopter is to get off once you've gotten all 4 tiles. This really helps people move around quickly. And the last one is actually the bad card. There's 3 of these water rise cards. This makes the game harder. So a few things happen when this happens. First of all, we move up the water level. So this goes from here up to the next level, which means now instead of drawing 2 cards, we're always going to be drawing 3. And then we take all the cards that have already been flooded from the island, we shuffle these cards, and then these cards get placed on top of the flood deck. So the ones that were already being affected are going to be the first ones affected next. And of course, now we're going to draw 3 cards, so Temple of Sun gets hit, Dunes of Deception would get hit, and Cave of Shadows would get hit. And a lot of times when this is happening, they're disappearing off the map. That's pretty much the game. You're trying to get those treasures and get off the island before it sinks, and use all your special abilities while getting this done cooperatively. All right, there is Forbidden Island. First of all, I've got to say, this is the game that got me back into the board gaming hobby as an adult. I played a ton of games as a kid, played some through high school, some in college. Then over time, I kind of got away from it, and this game drew me back in, and I have a special affinity for this game because of that. Now, let me tell you what, I absolutely love this game. It's pretty obvious from my opening remarks that this is a game that I love. Why is that? Number one, accessibility. You can pretty much teach this game to everybody because the actions are very simple and it's cooperative. So if someone's learning the rules, you can work with them to help talk through their decisions, so it's easily accessible to anybody. I've brought this game in to my work, and at lunchtime, us and the engineers have played this, and they hadn't played a lot of games when I had brought this in, and they learned it very quickly. So it's easy to learn. The theme is cool. Let's go on an island and explore together. The artwork is amazing. Like as I said in the overview, it really reminded me of that old computer game called Myst. The artwork's awesome. The components are great. The tension in this game is huge. Like, sure, it's not the deepest game in the world, but I think it offers a good amount of decisions when you're first starting to get into these hobby games, and a great entry-level sort of cooperative game. Now there's other cooperative games that were done by the same designer, Matt Leacock, that I'll talk about a little bit, like, Forbidden Desert and Pandemic. So it has a similar feel. This, this is still my favorite of the three because it's so accessible, because I can bring it into pretty much anywhere, but I can play it with gamers and still have a lot of fun. And because this one seems for me to have the best known package there where everything just fits together. There's tension every game. I've never played a game where there has not been a ton of tension in this game. For me, the tension is all throughout, and it's in every game as it's starting to shrink. You're trying to figure out what to do. You have that spatial aspect where you're like, hey, we've got to leave this lane open because otherwise we can't get back there. And you're fighting over which ones are gonna, keep you alive. Love, love, love this game. We actually use this game as a second interview at our place of business. When we interview engineers for jobs, we bring them in after the first round of interviews, and we actually play this with them because you can learn a lot about somebody as to how they interact with others, how they share ideas, what they say about your ideas, and how you work together as a team. I love co-op games. It helps families work together, which then when there are difficulties in families, if you've worked together through problems in a board game, it's more easily to work through them, in real life. And this is one of those beginner games that can get you to that point. So I love this game for many reasons, and I think this should be in everybody's collection. It's very accessible. You can find it, in like the Targets and the Barnes and Nobles and such like that. And if you're looking for something different, if you've only played maybe Monopoly and Sorry and things like that, this would be a great first game into that sort of hobby market that are games that you've never maybe heard before or seen or played, but it's a good dive into good family fun. So I love this game, and it's long overdue that I've reviewed it. It's one of my favorites in my top 100 a couple years ago. I believe it was even in my top 20, and I still love it and play it a lot. So because of that, I'm obviously keeping it in my library. So let's induct this into my gaming library with a saxophone serenade.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com.